It is the fourth model introduced in the 2024 Martian Successor Nadesico Collaboration, sporting a bulky design representative of that of the mighty Black Salena. It is KSN03 Fritilla Cry, with a mostly new kit of hard hammer, shotgun, sanction, float legs, and the leg ability of Purge, which is a brand new leg ability that buffs all leg stats minus armor and heavy limits when arms get broken, and is at full effect when both arms are broken. Now, as a model sporting a lot of very heavy armor and some pretty nasty skills at that, Fritilla Cry is most certainly holding up the momentum and keeping it up as the Martian Successor Nadesico Collaboration continues. With a mostly synergetic kit that's built to be able to face enemies forward or backward, and when the armor is shed, the guns come out. Head of Hard Hammer is a brand new melee skill being introduced in the game that basically is like a Hammer 2.0 or even a 3.0 if you want to consider Emit Hammer in that mix. Hard Hammer, on the other hand, packs passive defense ignore very similarly to other skills like Pile or even Railgun. Hard Hammer hits just a little bit more aggressively. In addition to packing passive defense ignore, Hard Hammer also will convert the leg's resistance stats cumulatively, both melee and shooting resist, into bonus power when attacking. So even though Hard Hammer is packing a relatively modest base power at 1032, that is before any other kind of effect comes into play. And if you decide to pair this off with a very bulky type of leg, which, would you look at that, Fritilla Cry is packing some pretty impressive resist stats, you are going to be certainly hitting incredibly hard with that bonk of all times when you go and hit the center line. Shotgun on the right arm is a scatter type shooting skill that serves one of two different ways. If you're able to attack a foe from the front and attack them aggressively, the damage is buffed and it is also a sure crit, which is guaranteed to be as immensely painful as possible. And given that it is a scattered AoE type of attack, it will attack one part normally and then two other parts at random. However, if you do not attack a foe facing you from the front, you will instead be dealing only half damage instead. Sanction on the left arm is more or less kind of the inverse of punishment, but also serving as an inverse to positional combat as shotgun. Instead of facing a foe from the front, Sanction instead gives you bonus damage when fighting somebody facing away from you in their cooldown phase. Additionally, in addition to getting that extra times 1.5 power when attacking a foe in cool, you also have the opportunity to inflict Canceller, Freeze, Hold, Melt, or Defense Seal at random. And to explain each of those briefly, because that is a number of different types of ailments, Canceller basically prevents a particular skill from being attacked if it hits a part, or a no dodge, I believe it's no dodge, or no defend if you hit them on their legs. Freeze, of course, stuns an enemy cold, guaranteeing all the next hit will land and be crit on top of that. Hold prevents the foe from being able to dodge. Melt for that passive damage over time, and Defense Seal for guaranteeing that while they can still dodge, any hit that lands is going to be immensely painful at a guaranteed crit on top of that. Float legs also means that Fritilla Cry will have a pretty solid coverage across all terrains at A rank across the board, and of course S rank on Cyber. And compared to most other models, Fritilla Cry is probably going to be the first one that is starting to broach into some serious boss type territory with the numbers that he's bringing to the table. Not just with the heavy armor, but also with the very solid leg stats as well, which means that the leg that you can use more or less anywhere, either as a pure set or as a mixed parts, and still have some pretty solid damage reduction and chunky armor that you can use at your disposal. With the base mobility at 805, it means he's already off to a pretty solid start in the speed department before any other modifiers come into play, and the evade of 1137 is also in that really nice little sweet spot you want to be as well. Usually, if you can keep your evade above 1000, that usually keeps you in that nice little sweet spot where you have a pretty decent time of a chance of dodging or grazing incoming blows. A melee resist of 1612 and a shoot resist of 1749 basically will put Fritilla Cry into some pretty solid boss type territory in terms of the damage reduction it has, and even rivaling some tank legs to a point with the kind of heavy armor that it comes packing with. On the topic of armor, he's packing about 49, almost 5,000 HP for the head, about 3,900 per arm, and about 4,200 for the legs. So not only is he rather chunky in the damage reduction department, but he's also remarkably healthy in the HP department as well. So he can most certainly hold his own and take a few pretty solid hits before anything does end up taking him out quicker than later. Base power is also not too shabby too, at a base 1600, almost 1700 there for Sanction before any other modifiers come into play. But it is also worth noting that both Shotgun and Sanction, as powerful as they are also kind of positionally reliant. Shotgun requires you to hit somebody facing towards you in their heat phase, and Sanction requires you to attack somebody facing away from you in their cooldown phase. If you fail to make either of these requirements, you instead will be dealing half of your intended damage. But if you are able to time it correctly in either, depending on which one you choose to use, you get a times 1.5 damage bonus no matter which way you choose to go. As far as heat and cool, he's actually pretty solid as well, and I tend not to mention these two skills particularly heavily unless it's worth noting. But given that both arms are actually in the pretty modest mid to high 700s, and even Hard Hammer as well in the low 600 to mid to high 600s, it's actually not too shabby, and you should be able to use any one of his three skills pretty reliably and not have to worry too badly on chunking up in the rear, or even being able to mistime a positionally reliant attack. All this being said though, as a pure set, I still have to rate Fritilla Cry a pretty well-rounded 8 out of 10. He's honestly pretty synergetic unto himself and covers a lot of bases, even if he is very heavily positionally reliant, which I have been saying a lot up to this point. If you're able to time it correctly, Shotgun there for your sure crit for facing someone facing toward you in heat, Sanction for your ailment combat, whether you hit them behind or in front or facing you, and of course for the damage reduction, and for the damage bonus, I should say. And the leg ability of Purge actually comes pretty interestingly here as a nice bonus. So basically, your whole shtick, if you plan to use Fritilla Cry, is to rely pretty heavily on Shotgun or Sanction, and basically alternate between the two of them as freely as you need and at your discretion, and essentially not touch Hard Hammer at all. However, once you start taking some solid hits and you lose an arm or even both arms and you're down to the wire with Hard Hammer, then you can really start cooking with it with the bonus stats that you'd be getting thanks to Purge. Now, while you can still technically use Hard Hammer immediately with some very solid damage reduction numbers in the resist stats, you can most certainly cook even higher if you manage to break both the arms first, and once the armor shed, then you can bring the pain. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him equally at an 8 out of 10 for these same reasons. While Hard Hammer might be a little reliant on what kind of legs you choose to use him on, particularly favoring very heavy, bulky ones such as boss-type float legs or biped legs, or even in particular tank-type legs, which really specialize in that high damage reduction. Shotgun and Sanction are moves that you can probably use pretty reliably and not have to worry too heavily on having to slot it into the team with any extra thought, aside from the fact that it is a heavy part. On the topic of heavy skills, he is also weak to heavy punish, so break hammer, break rush, or anything else of the like will very easily shred this guy's armor very quickly and very easily. Whereas having float legs with triple heavy support is also good to have at your disposal. Just again, do make sure you keep that in mind. As one final reminder and warning, just bear in mind, Shotgun and Sanction can be incredibly powerful, but if you are not facing someone at their conditional direction, you basically will be dealing nothing more than a long-range love tap.